Welcome to Encounter, where we celebrate putting faith into action and community leaders who live out compassion, grace, and love. We're a program of the Broome County Council of Churches that addresses food insecurity through CHOW and the Greater Good Grocery, provides hospital and jail ministry, builds wheelchair ramps, and assists neighbors with transportation and shopping services through Faith in Action volunteers. We invite you to the conversation. Encounter your neighbors as we learn to walk together in love and kindness.
Brothers and sisters, good morning and welcome to the Encounter program sponsored by the Broome County Council of Churches. I'm your host, Mark Kimpland, the senior pastor at the Endwell United Methodist Church. As we continue to dive into the summer months, it's always a blessing to me to connect and use this time to connect with colleagues and dear friends in ministry so that we can exchange ideas and thoughts. And so I'm very, very excited to have the Reverend Dr. Barbara Thorington Green with us this morning. She has been on the Encounter program before, but it's been a while, and I look forward to this time in catching up with you and kind of seeing what new thoughts have been emerging over the time that we've been absent from one another. So welcome to the Encounter program.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. And for those of you at home who will be watching, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join in another encounter.
Yes. And so we do. We what I love about hosting this is encountering different people and agencies and ministries and the way in which Broome County is blessed in many, many ways to help and walk alongside each other. So this is going to be fantastic. Let's start here, Barbara, if we can. Tell us about Barbara Green, about your background, a little history that has brought you to this moment.
And 3 hours later,
yeah.
I grew up on a dairy farm, and so I have that kind of background. Got married young, had my children, and then felt a call into ministry, and re-entered the field of education so that I could communicate intelligently, and ended up with a doctorate from Boston University while I was working, serving churches. So it's been a delightful life. And now I'm almost 80, and I'm thinking more and more about life and what is out there. And what even is involved in my being alive. What does it take for us to be alive? Yeah. Along the way, I've studied a lot of science, and I think those two things come together. I read a meme just yesterday, and it was about a little study of science might lead you into atheism, but a deep study of science will lead you into belief. Yes. Now, I don't think they were talking about Christianity necessarily, but a belief that there's something far beyond us.
Yes.
When I was in Boston, one of the things I had time for was in-depth study of John Wesley, and then eventually of his mother, Susanna, and of medieval women. Particularly, Julian of Norwich was the first woman I studied, and I was just overwhelmed. Then Hildegard of Bingen and Catherine of Siena. One of the things Catherine of Siena wrote, she often had the Pope's ear, and one of the things she wrote was the priests, since the sale of indulgences, had been leading the church away from a focus on life and love to a focus on sin and death.
Yes.
And somehow I still remember that, and that was probably 30 years ago.
Yes, yes.
And so now we do hear a lot about love. But in the last couple of years, I thought, well, how about that other half, life? And Susanna Wesley, she made a comment in her writings that she heard too much about the priests and sin and not enough about God and goodness.
Yes.
So all these things seem to join together. in my brain.
Yeah.
And another woman is Hildegard of Bingen, who writes about verdancy. I mean, she's just an amazing woman in every field, far too intelligent for me to really connect with. But I connected with her idea of verdancy, this greenness, this aliveness. And she just, everything good ends up being, at one point or another, verdant, meaning life-giving and full of life.
Yeah.
So another thing I remember, as a child even, being on a farm, I had a lot of work to do. However, once in a while I'd get a break. And I remember one day going up to this field we called it the Side Hill Meadow, and just lying on the ground and like I'm hugging it. And I don't know why I did that. I have no idea. But I've 2 or 3 times in my life, I have just had that urge to hug the earth.
Yeah.
And I've read all kinds of things about life, that without that top 6 inches of topsoil, none of us would exist.
Yes. Yeah.
I also know that within you are about 30 trillion cells.
Yes.
In me, probably only 25. You know. Although I'm pretty tall, so it might be
There you
more.
go. You make up for it. Yes.
There is just, and everything has to work. You know, when it doesn't, that's when we go to the doctors. That's when we stay in bed, when things aren't working right. We have a little gland called the pineal gland. It's the smallest gland in our bodies. There are people who've spent their whole life studying it, and they still say they don't know. They don't really understand what this gland does, other than it has to do with our circadian rhythm. Life. The other day I was outside and I saw this tiniest toad. I almost stepped on him, but he hopped and of course startled me. And then later in the day there's this great big fat toad out in the lawn. And you think, you know, they're alive. They have all these cells too. I worked for doctors for a while, and a fella came in, worked for IBM, and he had a noise in his ear and it was driving him crazy. So we flushed it out and he took it back with him. Next visit, and in fact I think he made a specific visit in to bring us this picture. He had gone back to IBM and he had access to electron microscope, and he had enlarged this thing. Now, had 2 eyes, and each eye probably had 50 facets, and there were hair follicles coming out of his body. He had sort of like fangs. It looked like something somebody would make up for a monster movie or something. And here it was, this tiny little thing. When you think about it, probably also had a digestive system and probably a respiratory system. And you think, okay, I can remember the specific feeling I had of needing to fall on my knees. I didn't embarrass the doctors by doing that. But it was like, wow. How can this be? How can this be?
Let me add, because as you're describing passionately on this, the word reawakening kind of comes to me. What was your background in religion and faith prior to that? Because I know that's been my struggle, growing up in a very conservative kind of understanding.
I grew up in the Sunday school system of a small United Methodist church. My father, being a farmer, couldn't often be free at the time of worship service, and my mother was determined that people would talk about her if she went to church without Dad. So, but she was a great Sunday school teacher, and she had a sandbox for the kids. She would only teach nursery and kindergarten because she felt like if you got a good start, it would make all the difference. And she was modern in her reading, and we had painting easels, and we learned songs about love. I don't think I heard about Jesus dying for our sins until I moved to Binghamton. And we have this big Baptist area. It just had, that kind of talk. In fact, I remember being in church in Harpersville one day, and I don't know, the minister had been talking in that way, and one day I raised my hand and I said, you know, I feel more like Jesus lived for me than Jesus died for me. So that's what I grew up with.
Okay.
That kind of feeling. And he
Yes.
misinterpreted what I said and took it the total other direction.
Okay.
But,
Yes.
but
yes.
I still, I feel that way, that Jesus lived for me. Now, I really went off to Boston because I had become enamored with Holy Communion.
Okay.
It just seemed like, well, in local pastor school, we had to read books, and one was by James White, and he suggested in his book that if we didn't appreciate Holy Communion, which I didn't at that point, it's because you're not celebrating it often enough. There was some kind of indication of that.
Okay,
Now, anybody
okay.
else could read the book and not get that at all,
Okay,
but
okay.
that's what I
Fair
did.
enough, fair
So I just walked into my church and says, okay, from now on, we're going to have communion every Sunday
Yes.
because I have a problem.
Okay.
And we did, and everybody became so, it was like this holiest time, and I would, as I was reading and studying,
Yeah.
I get too excited.
Yeah.
As I was reading and studying, I'd share things with them, and they would come up, the little children with their hands like
Yes,
this, you know,
yes,
week after
yes,
week. And
yes.
it didn't take long, 5 minutes maybe. It's
Yeah.
a small church. And
Yeah.
so I just felt like there was something huge here happening. And
And how did that? So I want to make sure I get this right. So the theology of Holy Communion and such things really didn't connect theologically with you early on.
Right.
Or it
I
meant
wasn't
something
comfortable with
Yes.
the prayer words of
Sure.
blood. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still believing that Jesus lived for me.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
And so,
yeah.
and then I find out the earliest church prayers didn't even talk about Jesus' death for communion. And so, and I got very involved in all of that. I don't want to go on that streak, except to say that to this day, in fact, this morning I was thinking, the thing I brought to all those committees that I was on about the study of Holy Communion was to push them to talk about the presence of Jesus in it and a spiritual meal to feed the soul and invite all, because if you're at my house at mealtime, well, don't come every day, but if you're at my house at mealtime, I'm not going to say, well, let's see, did you wash your hands this morning? Have you showered this week? Have you behaved yourself every minute of the Nah, just come and eat.
Come, be in fellowship.
And let's be part of this. So, again, it's the life, seems to me it's more and more about life. Susanna Wesley, maybe I just said that. I am getting older. In her writings, I think I did, stressed that she heard so much about sin and the priest, and so little about God and goodness. And that continues to play around. It's like, what do we preach about?
Right.
As clergy, do we preach about how marvelous God is and its greatness of nature? Or do we keep focusing on our own lives, and how does that change people? If every Sunday they were overwhelmed with the goodness of God, and sometimes I go to church and sometimes that happens, but the majority of the time it's more about what we need to be doing.
Right.
More about doing than being.
Yes. And the guilt associated with that. Yes.
And you're just not doing all the things you ought to be doing. Do. And do more. What if it was more on the being, on God, and the greatness of God, not the finger pointing of God. Would all those other changes just take place?
Friends, I am thrilled to have the Reverend Dr. Barbara Thorington Green with us, a retired United Methodist clergy. I'm amazed that you were saying that. A formative experience I had when I think I was maybe 10 or 11. I was always in church, very fundamental, very conservative church. But I remember even at that young, I was questioning this idea of damnation and hell and you're fried no matter what you do. Yeah. And it was a part of every liturgy of every Sunday is to share a prayer of confession. And I decided one time when I was, and I remember this, I was 10 years old, and I said, I'm not going to do anything wrong this week, because I'm going to come back next week and not have to say that. And I remember doing that, where everyone was confessing, and I just,
you're right.
Part of peacock, I was perfect. But it still was kind of resonating in my spirit,
And how destructive that can be in the way you see yourself, and how a prisoner you can become. Instead of being who you are. Because we don't even know what sin is, really. I mean, we can say some things are evil. It's kind of obvious. You're killing somebody or raping somebody. It's probably not a good thing. But there have been times when I thought I was doing a good thing, and it didn't turn out to be good at all. And sometimes I thought, I remember one time, I just scolded this alcoholic, and that wasn't my way at all, and I just let him have it. And afterwards, I felt so guilty. And lo and behold, that was exactly what he needed to hear. Went off and had 10 years of sobriety. And, we don't even know.
Because it is perspective and the moment, and things change, and
And I know that women should not be ministers, and I know all these things that I thought were bad growing up. So much is just the culture, the society.
Absolutely, it absolutely is.
But there's something just grand when you let your eyes open up. There's something called blue chicory. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's a very wiry plant. I was going to bring some, but I forgot. Anyway, it has blue flower on top. I can remember, so again, this is back 40 years, I was working at Binghamton General, and I drove by this spot that was all concrete, but lo and behold, there was some blue chicory growing out of it. Now, the next year, there were daisies there. Blue chicory is just such an amazing plant because it'll grow any place. It'll grow in rocks. It'll grow in gravel. It grew in concrete. There was probably some little fine thing, and it broke it up so that next year there could be daisies. It's
amazing. When we were talking about getting together here to talk about this, you referred to the amazing abundance of life, and I was struck by that with this amazing abundance of life. How is that transformed? Probably everything that you think.
Everything you see. If I could only tell myself that every minute of the day. Most of the time I'm Barbara. I'm cleaning the floors, and I'm reading a book, and I'm But when I have a moment. It's like, it's not just about me, It's about this. I mean, every tree has cells. There's xylem and phloem, there's liquid going up, there's stuff coming down. We inhale, and somehow our bodies take the oxygen that our cells need, all 30 trillion of them, and distributes the oxygen to the cells so they stay alive, and the things we don't need come back out, and we inhale and we exhale. We receive and we give. I have ridden in T's in Boston that were so packed you couldn't, and yet we were all breathing. And we didn't die because all those carbon dioxide, so we're also giving off oxygen. When we give off, it's just not as much oxygen. Because we all kept breathing. And when we eat food, somehow it gets digested. We have all these organisms in our gut. And if they get off, you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
And somehow it happens. And we digest it. We get rid of what we can't use or don't use. And we gain weight. But I think if we thought more, we wouldn't eat as much. If we honored nature, we wouldn't eat as much.
Yes.
If we honored life.
Yeah.
The longer I live, the more I realize every animal out there seems to have what I would call personality, but I guess you'd call it animality. I don't know what you'd call it.
Yeah.
But they all have so much more to them
Yes.
than I grew up thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a rich, deep understanding when we see life that way, rather than it just revolves around me and I am the one of the universe.
And our scriptures tend to lead us in that direction. Some of our scriptures, I should say, tend to lead us to feel that way, that mankind, that people are the end-all, be-all.
All of that.
Right.
Yes.
But the word awe is huge.
Yes.
Now, we have places in our scripture that talk about fear of God. I think the more correct interpretation, and I have read that it's appropriate to interpret that as awe. Mm-hmm. It's the awe of God. Now, there is some kind of fear involved in that. When you're like my feeling like falling to my knees when I saw that bug.
Yes.
It's but awe changes lives, I think.
Yeah. One of the things that you talk about getting older and we learn different things and perspectives change, and I think probably open up more to us and such. And I've really gotten my head around more recently the idea of consciously during the day looking up, looking around, rather than looking down at the calendar or the computer screen or my phone, but the ability and the gift to give yourself in this abundant life to look up and beyond.
And if you don't, and if we're not teaching that as a very integral part of our religion, should it even exist? If we're not proclaiming the awesomeness of life and however you see God. Now, I struggle with even using the word because everybody thinks they know what you're talking about.
Sure. Everyone knows.
None of us know. I mean,
yeah.
Susanna Wesley just simply said it's beyond anything we can know.
Yes.
It's something like supreme goodness. It's something like the fountain of life.
Yes.
Think of God as fountain of life.
Yeah.
Whoa! An artesian spring, a geyser.
It seems so many times. Let me do this real quick. Friends, I just want to reintroduce our guest as the Reverend Dr. Barbara Thorington Green. We're having a marvelous discussion here.
We won't want to quit.
We forget to live in wonder.
Yeah, there's another word.
As if our faith, our spirituality, our essence of being is something to figure out, where the mystery is no longer a mystery. And I can't think of a more depressing, limited, guilt-ridden, self-absorbed, narcissistic way of living when you try to solve the mystery.
Or when you're spending all your time trying to solve it.
Yes. Rather than living in it.
Right.
And finding ways in which that mystery produces abundant, amazing life.
And see, you used the word wonder.
Yeah.
Now, we have the word wonderful. We say it all the time. But do we think of what we're saying? We're saying it's full of wonder.
Yes.
It's full of wonder.
Yeah.
It's like the word salvation. That has an L in it. It's a salve.
Yeah.
How much healing could take place if we looked at the sky more often and our feet less so?
Yes.
It's,
I've shared this many times. In my 39 years, I've used one phrase in almost every funeral I do, and the funeral directors kind of joke about it. We know it's coming, kind of thing. The idea of understanding death as entrance into new life. I don't. But I say this: I don't stand before you arrogant enough or ignorant enough to tell you I got it all figured out.
Right.
And every single time I share that, there's a collective exhale in the room.
There is. Oh. People are hungry for this.
Yes.
We think the religious people are those who come to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that think about God. I have visited so many people in hospitals who their first line is, I don't go to church,
Oh, absolutely.
but I pray.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and then I've had people in church say, I don't know how people make it without God, as if only the people in church have God.
Yeah, yes.
And we've taught them that.
Yes.
This isn't something they figured. We've taught them that.
Absolutely, yes.
Susanna Wesley writes about natural religion as complementary, or it's sort of a debate, revealed religion,
Okay.
with Christianity being in the revealed religion. But she was a philosopher as well as a theologian, and she had a lot of people, or knew a lot of people, who would fall more into, yes, I believe in God, because the example she uses is we have this bone up here that protects our eyes. You know, so you know she saw those intricacies that we just take for,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
most of my life I just take everything for granted.
Yeah.
But on occasion,
Yeah.
something else strikes me.
Yes.
And oftentimes I've been writing, Reverend Kimpland mentioned Facebook. On occasion, I feel like after I've taken a walk or something, I feel like I have to send this out, and I'll write up a little short blurb about
Yeah.
something awesome
Yes.
that I just witnessed or felt in my heart. And that encourages me to take a walk once in a while.
Yeah. And you know what, I found that's the real, in some ways, the real gift of life, is that discovery, is that awakening, is that wonder.
It could be just a pine cone.
It can be anything. It can be absolutely anything. And to be spiritually aware, physically aware, mentally aware, emotionally aware, relationally aware, that it's all around us. And it's all around us. And what a joy to share that.
The word spiritual, again, just clicks. When my dissertation was on the how clergy women in the United Methodist Church saw preaching in themselves as preachers. And one of the words they used more than I ever would have expected was spirit or spirituality,
Yes.
or that this connection,
Yes.
this connection that comes in the midst of this, to me, this awe, is vital. This feeling that there's something more.
Yes.
This feeling that there's a presence that's beyond anything we can imagine.
Yes. Yes.
Can just change lives.
It does.
Yeah.
Barbara, I just want to thank you. Thank you for your willingness to share, to
I
enlighten.
love to share.
And to be a part of this discussion. And I know it's going to touch hearts and lives of those that have been with us this morning. And friends, again, I want to thank the Reverend Dr. Barbara Thorington Green for being our guest. And my hope and prayer is that her insights that she has shared today will lead us to a deeper understanding of the abundant life and love that we have been given so that we might share it with one another. So have a wonderful week and be kind to one another. God bless.